this computer. Okay, so we are up to the middle of Kivud Avayim, honoring one's parents, and we discussed last time that even though this is a very dynamic, complicated mitzvah to honor one's parents throughout one's life as they change, as you change, and also, the obligation's very far-reaching. It goes it's far-reaching. We discussed that honoring really means to take care of your parents' physical needs. That's what it means to honor them. To respect them technically means to respect them means to really what we call honor, meaning that's yira. That means not to contradict them, to speak to them with great respect, not to, one of the laws, not to call them by their first name. And we discussed that really these are examples of how to honor and respect one's parents. Says Rabbeinu Yonah that to bring parents nachas, right, is the tachlis over here. That as a child, and we spoke about the Maharal of Prague, that really recognizing that your parents are the most determinant thing in your life, meaning more than anything else, who you are, where you are, what your challenges are, what your blessings are dependent on your parents for many, many reasons. And it's that when you honor them, when you give them nachas, when you appreciate your parents, you're also appreciating Hashem in your life. The hashgacha pratis, the specific divine providence in your life is that you landed up with such beautiful parents. Okay, now today we're going to go into the we also discussed that underlying honoring them, taking care of them, is just hakaras hatov, is expressing the gratitude we should have to our parents. After all, they had us, they gave us life. Depending on specific situations, they, generally speaking, took care of us, helped us through our youth, the different stages of youth, and some of us are still 50 and benefiting, but let's not get into personal things. Okay, now let's talk about now today authority. Let's talk about what this mitzvah, right, which was in Parshas Kedoshim to you, which is Ish Imo va'aviv tiru. A man, his mother and his father, he should fear. And we translated that as meaning not only fear, but be in awe, respect them. So let's look over here. The traditional understanding of authority has changed in recent times. The following sources explore the role of authority plays in parent-child relationship and beyond. Source 1, Rabbi Hirsch. The knowledge and acknowledgement of historical facts depends solely on tradition. And tradition depends solely on the faithful transmission by parents to children and on the willing acceptance by children from the hands of their parents. Meaning, Yiddishkeit, the Messiah, the tradition that is passed down from parent to child to continue in the ways of Judaism and to be an upstanding, proud, practicing, observant, fully committed Jew is a process of parents teaching children, so that the continuance of God's whole great institution of Judaism rests entirely on the theoretical and practical obedience of children to parents, and respecting parents is the basic condition for the eternal existence of the Jewish nation. Meaning that the conduit, the pipeline between parents and children is respect. Right? As Rav Dessler says, that's why it's not only do we find respecting parents, we respect our teachers, because a necessary condition to learn from somebody is that you respect them. You recognize them as a higher authority, be it that they have more experience, be it that they are more closer to the tradition than you are, and be it that they have a knowledge. They are authoritative in terms of what knowing more than you. So that's a very natural thing in children to expect that their parents actually know more than them until it comes to technology. But that natural meter, that natural character trait of respecting those who have more authority than you needs to be continued throughout life. Now, there's a very interesting Ramah, the Ramah of Moshe Isserles, of course, the great rabbi from Krakow that wrote down really the code of Jewish law for Ashkenazi Jewry as comments into the Shulchan Aruch. So he says, if the father protests against the son marrying a specific woman, right? I don't protest, I fully protest. I fully embrace, and I'm very happy that our son Yaakov, please God, getting married to Ilana on Sunday, and you're all invited. I hope you all got the link. Did you all get the link?
Yes, thank you.
Good, good. 4:30 in New York time. I guess that's 10:30 South African time, 11:30 Israel time. If a father protests,
1:30
if the father, sorry?
I did 1:30 Los Angeles.
Oh yes, if you happen to be in Los Angeles, it will be 1:30. And
Is it 10:30 at night or 10:30 in the morning?
no, you are ahead of us. 10:30 at night. If the father protests against the son marrying
So,
a
Rabbi, you
specific
say the
woman,
wedding's 10:30 at night.
correct, 4:30 p.m. New York time. We
10:30.
don't want to make it 4:30 a.m. New York time.
But
So it's 10:30 South African time.
Yes.
we
PM.
don't have the link.
You'll get it. Relax. Okay.
Get it,
If
get
the
it.
father protests against the son marrying a specific woman that the son wishes to marry, the son does not need to listen to his father. Now, one of the laws we learned about respecting parents is not contradicting them. So why is it that the child is allowed to contradict the wishes of the parents when it comes to marrying? So it's a very interesting area, a very interesting question to answer. The best answer I have found is that this mitzvah to honor parents, to respect them, is in your relationship. Parents do not own children. They are independent beings. And as long as they are doing things in their own life, which are not directly, it's not between you and them. This is between him and his wife. You have no right to interfere. So it kind of marginalizes a little bit and puts into perspective that this is very much the relationship between child and parent. Okay. You shall rise up before an old person, and you shall respect a learned person, and you shall fear your God. I am the Lord. So that's where this core value of respect for authority goes beyond parents to anyone that is an authority. Okay, Rabbi Yochanan himself would stand before an Aramean, a Gentile elder, and he said, how many experiences, Rashi's hardships and miracles, have occurred to these individuals, meaning life experience. The very fact that a person has life experience, one needs to respect, right? If anyone is over 70 years old, they need to be stood up for, right? Barry, how old are you now?
83, almost.
80. Oh, you're going to have a second bar mitzvah.
Yeah, no ways.
Okay. Actually, just spoke to
Okay.
Rabbi Shippel. He's going to come to the chuppah, please, God.
Yeah.
Okay.
Come on, Barry, you want to lift you up on a chair and throw sweets.
So
If you only allow 15 people, how come Shippel's coming?
no, we were allowed 17 people.
Okay.
The police commissioner apparently gave us permission. Okay. In today's conversation pieces, in today's society, where does authority lie? What is the relationship between responsibility and authority? In contemporary society, there's emphasis on the individual authority to decide what is right for them. How does this pose a challenge to our traditional roles of authority and respect? And what is the obligation of parents to pass down Jewish traditions and values to the next generation? What are some of the challenges in fulfilling this obligation? Let's hear it.
It's very interesting questions. I find the questions very interesting. Excuse me, very interesting because in this day and age, it would seem that the age of an individual does not necessarily reflect their authority. It could be that in the bygone era, with life experience came authority, but nowadays there are certain things that, I mean, the world has changed so much when it comes to technology, for example, and new risks and things like that have come into being, that age is not necessarily a factor. Like if you even take into account coronavirus, and you could take one of the oldest, most world-renowned professors of medicine, something like that, he might not be in touch with the modern age technology or modern age medication as a younger professor.
Mm-hmm. How does that implicate Kivud Av V'Em, honoring parents?
It makes it more difficult.
Because you might land up being an authority, maybe greater even than your parents at a younger age.
Right.
But that doesn't give you a right not to respect them.
But that only makes you an authority in certain spheres, not in experience of life.
Correct.
Right. So you might be updated in terms of you might be further ahead in your knowledge of how to use technology and understand certain aspects about what's going on. But you're saying your life experience is still lacking.
No, most kids today are much more educated than their parents. Okay. Because
you can speak for yourself, Kim.
Okay, no, but I'm saying generally, I mean, if I look at my parents and my parents' generation and my generation, my children's generation, kids today are much more educated and that. But that doesn't make them, that education doesn't allow for them to be disrespectful. In fact, they should be more respectful because we have given them those opportunities that older generations didn't have.
I like that. Meaning, you
but,
make... Go on, Farrell.
So, but that applies to every single generation, moving from time to now. Each generation increases in something that their parents actually taught them, and so each generation is cleverer, is more knowledgeable than the next.
Right. You're saying as our understanding of this world, from the different discoveries made, you could, probably the graph was pretty flat until the Industrial Revolution.
Exactly. Sorry, I was thinking exactly the same thing.
And then from then, it really exponentially grew.
Absolutely. In
terms of how much development we have been able to, and of course, our children are more in touch with they land on a more sophisticated world, and they're able to take it further. But yeah, I agree with Kim. If anything, that one of the questions here is, what is the relationship between responsibility and authority? And
Rabbi, I think there's a big difference between responsibility and authority, but I think I just disagree a little bit with what Farrell said when it comes to every generation since time immemorial being more developed than the previous one. I don't think that's necessarily true. And I think that there was a point where the curve was flat, like you're saying now, and let's say it was the Industrial Revolution.
Excuse the pun.
Yeah, okay, excuse the pun, let's flatten the curve. So the curve was flat. There were generations of milk farmers. There were generations, of people who taught their children to milk cows. And at the end of the day, there was one way at that time of milking a cow. And the father, or the Alter Zayde, who had the most experience milking the cow, was the Gaon when it came to cow milking. And he taught the younger generations how to do it. But then something like the Industrial Revolution came along, and that changed everything. So I don't think it's from time immemorial. I don't think that every generation is smarter than the previous one.
Okay, but definitely from the Industrial Revolution and onwards, there's definitely been
What about when man discovered how to make a cutting utensil out of a piece of stone, and then his son was sitting next to him while he was making it. That son developed it further with his thinking. He developed it further. It carries on. So anyway, whether the curve was not as steep but it was every generation, monkey see, monkey do, and develop. That's what the human brain is all about. You learn from somebody, and you develop that learning through your life.
So I think that the reason why parents try and give their children the best education is because the previous generations knew how hard it was for them to reach like the top. So, and if they had education, it would have been better. So I think that's the whole thing. That's why we put such a emphasis in education and educating our children.
So now,
and therefore children should be much more respectful, because the sacrifices that parents make to give their children that education and that should be much more appreciated.
So I think, Kim, we have to just, what makes this conversation so interesting is there seems to be two aspects of honoring parents. One is a sense of appreciation and gratitude, and the other is a sense of actual respect for their authority. So you saying, the fact that they might be better educated, more educated, and have been given more opportunities than we got, which, by the way, I think after 2008 and the recession, there was a lot of talk about how the next generation will be one of the first generations in modern history not to be as wealthy as their parents, right? They're going to have a harder time. The millennials, so it's not always, so easy to give kids a better life. But I definitely grew up in a home where my father would go to work and say, I'm going to work so you can, for you, in order to provide for you, in order that you can have your education and get ahead. I tell my kids I'm sending them for education so they can support me. But how times have changed. But the question, I think what the challenge is over here is, if you think of yourself as more developed, cleverer, wiser than your parents, why actually do you respect them as an authority? Of course you can be grateful. Grateful anyone that does something good for you, you can be tremendously grateful. But let's say
Because
you become a
because
doctor, you become
a
a doctor.
degree does
Parents, hang on a second. Let's say your parents help you to become a doctor. Now you're educated. You're not going to look to your parents for medical, advice, who are not doctors. Of course, you're going to use what you know more than your parents. So, in what sense is this mitzvah really to respect one's parents, to always speak with them in awe, to see them as an authoritative figure in your life?
Are you asking me?
No, everyone. That's the question we're trying to grapple with over here.
But I think that firstly, we must never confuse education or a degree or with life experiences. Okay, so that's number one. You always I might have a better education than my mother and my late father, but their life experiences and the challenges that they had, how can I say? I respect them for it, and just because I might have gone to varsity and got a degree, it doesn't make me a better person than them. Don't ever. One must never confuse the two. One must never think that because you've got a degree that you're superior to someone who doesn't. Because often people that have learned from the bottom up have and with life experiences are got far more practical experience than that. So I don't think you should the two don't
You're really saying at the end of the day, your parents are authoritative in your life, people to look up to.
Just because they're my parents. Bottom line, they're my parents.
I know, but how are they different? Why them? Just because they gave birth to you and took care of you. I'm being the devil's advocate here. It's okay. Just because they gave birth to you and looked after you, why do you need to look at them as an authority in your life? As an authority, treat them.
Well, I think that it all depends on the relationship you have with your parents. It depends on that also. The kind of relationship you have. For me, my parents were not just my meal ticket and my clothing account and that. They made me into the person that I am today. And for that I respect and I honor them. And
you're right.
I will always be there for them, and I will do anything I possibly can to help them, But that's because of my relationship, and that's I try and have.
I think obviously, it's interesting because I don't think that it's always true either that parents are better people than children. I'm sure that's not true. You got some really bad people that have
really bad parents.
and the children, Now we discussed last session that parents can, a person is not required to lose, be it physical, emotional, financial. You don't have to suffer a physical, emotional, financial loss in order to honor one's parents. However,
Rabbi, can I ask? No. Can I interject at some point?
Please, go ahead.
Just tell me when.
Now.
Okay, just listening to what everyone's saying. If you think about it, where did the Jews receive this actual commandment of having to honor parents? It was received in the desert at the time when we were actually receiving manna. There was no interaction at all or anything provided for by the parents specifically. And I think this ties into the fact that there's one thing that we know for sure is that to honor your parents is extremely difficult. And I always joke and say that's why it's listed as one of the 10 commandments. So I think it's pretty much a commandment, firstly. The only thing that you can really be indebted to your parents for is life itself, which we've discussed previously. But all the other stuff, this isn't a payback. It isn't like they actually, did anything for you that you owe them respect. You just need to respect them. It's a commandment.
Correct.
And I think if
Yeah.
we try and look for the answers, you'll get lost. I mean, if you look at today, today, I would say that children should be looking at society and saying, you parents have stuffed it up for us. Why should they respect us considering what we've done to the world? I mean, we're saying how educated we are. We provided them with an education. We provided them with an education because we thought that's what we should do. How many of us sit around telling our kids, you need to become something, you need to become something? And look at people today. They've worked for years and years and years, and right now they've just had everything taken away from them. So not such an easy point. Very, very difficult to get my head around.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. For sure. Listen, the way of learning Torah is always like looking at a piece of art. It is what it is, and that's we can't move away from it. Our job is to try and understand it. So I do think though that there is there's definite, listen, life experience is one thing. The fact that your parents are a part of the chain of the tradition of Judaism. You're Jewish generally, unless you're converted, through your parents, and they connect you back to the whole tradition, the whole world of Judaism throughout the ages. And maybe I'm just thinking if maybe when we speak about them being an authoritative, giving them respect as an authoritative person in your life, maybe the intent over there is for maybe this is more relevant at a younger age, and then as maybe we talked about the dynamic over here, that maybe at a younger age, this is younger children really need to respect their parents in order to listen to them. But then there's a change, and the child develops,
I say it's from authority as a younger child to respect as an older child.
Right. Yeah. So I would think that you go from respect to honor. So you respect them when you're young because really they're taking care of you. You don't have to take care of them, but you need to listen to them. And as you grow older, it changes more into now you start to take care of them, and there's less emphasis on the respect. Not that you could ever speak to them or deal with them in a way that's not respectful, but the underlying value of seeing them as an authoritative figure might change it. Just an idea.
Not a very good one, I would say.
I like that.
All right. Any other comments?
The
Mark?
response there is, yes, Mom, you're right.
Yes, Mom. Yes, Mother. Of course. I will try harder.
You don't have to try harder. I say you're an extremely wonderful son.
Oh, please tell God.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Very respectful.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Mother.
Rabbi, wait.
Whereas, I think, in all honesty, I think I am a very good son, but whatever I am able to do is because I did see my parents honor their parents.
That's what I wanted to say to you. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, if your children see you honoring your parents, they will generally honor you.
Correct.
Yes.
Because, actions speak louder than words.
And 9 out of 10 times, you'll find children are very respectful when they're young, and then when they're like teenagers and varsity and like until they get married and have their own children, they can like fall off the wagon a bit. But once they become a parent themselves,
Right.
that is when they have that ultimate respect for you.
Maybe. That's interesting.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's a very
Yeah, that is true.
dynamic relationship. Okay. Integration, let's finish up over here. What does this DBEAR mean to you as a core value? And one of the parts of this question is, how does it relate to other relationships? Are you able to look at this commandment and say, okay, here we have a commandment, honor and respect parents. How does this relate to other relationships in your life, to maybe others who are kind to you, or others who are authorities in your life? You know, to use these values in those relationships. What can it be? When can it be applied? What are the challenges you will face, and how can you overcome them? Any comments? You know, I think to me, one of the biggest challenges is that our world, our Western world, or at least world that aspires to be Western, wherever that might be, is very much under the impression of individual autonomy, right? That the individual can really make their own decisions, that people should find their own way, people should be free to do what they want, as long as they don't hurt anyone else. Makes it a little harder because there's an obligation here. This is saying you are, in one way or another, obligated to your parents. And in our modern world, we've really tried to, society, people have really tried to release any obligations, right? I don't owe anyone anything except myself. You know, that's the only, I'm WIFM, what's in it for me? And that's a big challenge. You know, if you have children growing up in a society like that, they're not going to very easily respect their parents. So I think that is an obstacle. I don't know if there are ways to get around that. You know, maybe you need to move to a place where it's better. I don't know where it is better. Anyone have an idea of how to overcome that?
Well, it's very difficult in a world such as today's world, isn't it?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
You know, you've got a bigger force guiding everybody.
Right.
So you can't go to people. There are people who are guiding the parents and the grandparents and everybody else. So everybody has got to make a decision for themselves. Sorry.
Yes, ma'am. No, I agree. Anyone else have an idea? Okay.
Just repeat the question again, sorry.
I think in our world where, you know, we ourselves very much live with a mindset of individual autonomy, meaning that people should really make up their own decisions. What they think is good for them is good. That is a challenge for this commandment, because it's saying, no, you should honor your parents, or whatever. If you don't want to honor your parents, whatever you don't like your parents, whatever, you know, you decide.
So I think that in modern society today, I think you have to show respect to your children as well, and show respect. You might not always agree with like what they want to do or how they want to live their lives and that, but you've got to be respectful that it's their choice. And I think that if you're respectful towards them, then you've got a bigger chance of them being respectful towards you.
That's interesting. So to embrace it in a way.
Yeah.
You know, we might not always agree with the way our children want to live their lives and that. And today, like, life is different than the old days. And then you just got to be respectful of that. You know, you don't always have to approve, but like, just show and it's not just a parent-child relationship. I think that if you show people respect, whoever they are, if I show you respect, then you'll show me respect. If I treat you with disrespect, then how can I expect you to respect me?
Yeah. As Shalom Schwartz, the founder of this program, said, you have to be a parent worthy of respect.
Mm.
You know, you can't just demand. I think, and Mark, maybe this speaks to your point, that, you know, yes, it is a commandment, and children do have to just do it. But it's a whole lot easier if you are a person worthy of respect than demanding of respect.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that what you're hitting on is the point that on the one side, it's a challenge for a child to have to learn how to respect and to try find the good in the parent so that they can respect them. And on the other hand, we have to show them an example of behavior which is worthy of respect. I kind of laughed myself personally because I had an incident once with my son Eli, and I said to him, you know, you're a from kid. You're supposed to respect your mother and your father. It's a primary, you know, commandment. And he just looked at me and said, I'm much better at the other 9.
He must be your son, Mark.
Yeah, but I'm saying, I mean, it is a commandment. It's something that we're going to struggle with. And like anything else, we have to plant the seeds in our children to nurture that ability of them to go out into the world and show respect. I mean, I think that respecting your mother and father is maybe even the easiest one. I think we should also start somewhere. If we can try in our homes to show respect for other people, respect for people's needs as well, you know, especially now with people needing food and things, just having respect that it's not, like you say, what's in it for me, that there's a bigger consciousness out there. And if we can teach our children those values, then perhaps they'll see meaning in life and they will respect us for those values that are, you know, timeless, that we can teach them.
Amen. Beautiful.
I mean, beautiful. Very good.
All right, everyone. Okay, let's stop here. We will see you on Sunday. Please, God, if you don't have the link, please bug me. I am going to send out a paperless post thing. So if you're on that list, you'll get it. If not, I should send it through WhatsApp as well. So don't panic. If you haven't got it by 4:29 on Sunday, call me and I'll send you that.
Okay, see you Sunday. Have a good
Mazel
Shabbos.
Mazel tov, all the best.
Mazel tov, Rabbi.
Okay.
Have a good Shabbos.
Thank you.
Lots of nachas.